Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today I'm joined by Simon Leslie, CEO of Inc. Global. It's a global travel media company. Simon has dedicated his career to creating travel publications that's been held by anyone who's ever flown on a plane in the last few decades. I think that includes most of us. That accomplishment has made them the world record holder for the number of in-flight magazines launched and published. What an interesting record. But more than that, Simon is a serial entrepreneur. And immediately, I think we have a lot in common, who has experienced the pandemic as well and see that it almost destroyed the business he spent 27 years building. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Same here. So let's jump from the deep end of this. What's entrepreneurship to you?
I keep getting asked this question, are you an entrepreneur? A good entrepreneur gets in, builds a business and sells it and goes on to his next venture. I've been doing this 28 years. So am I really an entrepreneur? The truth of the matter is I have actually sold the business 4 times. I've had 4 different owners, probably more if you think about when you change investors, you have a different boss.
Yeah.
But I love business. I love the idea of building, growing and developing businesses. And if you could do it in one business, brilliantly. If you do it in 10, even better as well.
Can you walk us through what you think in terms of these 2 dimensions that I'm going to share now? One of them is how entrepreneurship is perceived and appreciated, specifically in the UK versus the US and other places around the world. And the second dimension to that perhaps is, if we go back in time a bit, the concept of entrepreneurship is not something that's new. It's, I think, ancient in a way, right? But people did not used to call it entrepreneurship. It was if you had a shop where you baked bread, for example, and you've built that business, then that would be being a craftsman or like being a shop owner and so on. We had these different terminologies for the basic concept of, okay, there's a need in the market and I would like to create a service, a product that people would appreciate, and pay me something for it. So looking from these 2 dimensions, one of them, the time, and the other one, location, can you just spontaneously talk us through what you have in mind and what you've learned over the years? And perhaps what is it that you think in these dimensions that people do not usually agree with?
I'm trying to think about when that word became cool.
Yeah.
But you're right, because when I started, it was, we're going to start a business. It was never, we're going to be entrepreneurs. This must have come after the sort of 2001 bubble, all of a sudden, maybe it was 2008 when, Facebook and all those clans started, when it really picked up momentum. Because, it's a person who runs a business. They take the risks and they hope to make a profit. That's a literal definition of what an entrepreneur is. I think, somebody who works, I have people who work for me and I say to them, look, you are running your own business within my business. The fact that you don't have to take any risks, the fact that you don't have to worry about payroll, the fact that you don't have to worry if the clouds are going to swing a different way doesn't stop you being an entrepreneur, because it's the thinking, it's the way you see the world is what makes you entrepreneurial. If you just do as you've always been told and follow the same lanes, it doesn't matter if you run a business or not, you're not really an entrepreneur because you're not looking for that opportunity. To me, opportunity is everything. But every great opportunity, whatever guise it is, be it a promotion, be it love, be it building a business, be it anything, is gift wrapped in problems. And if you cannot deal with that element of it, you can't be an entrepreneur. If you can't learn to unpack problems and find the grit, the gift, the opportunity, the prize, then you are not an entrepreneur as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. There's a certain dilemma that I'm going to artificially create now just for the sake of this conversation, right? But this is something that I've personally experienced myself. And that perhaps goes back to the question of how entrepreneurship is perceived today versus a few decades ago, and here and now in the UK versus in other places as well, which is on the one end of the spectrum, I feel like there is this idea of creating value, making a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs famously said, nudging the market in a way. And I must admit, I was enamored by this idea myself, at least in the beginning of my entrepreneurship career, and changing the world for the better, right? That's one end of the spectrum. you're like this idealistic warrior, and you're using business as a way, as your weapon, basically. And the other end of that spectrum is being entirely opportunistic, really not thinking about the value or perhaps this service that your company does to the world, not really considering that, right? And this goes back, for example, just let me give an example for this concept that is very popularized by the marketing people is meaning marketing, right? Now, because people are seeking after meaning, then marketers kind of take this terminology and use it as a leverage to maybe sell more things, but forget the meaning in the meantime. So something like that, or simply, again, in the opposite side of that spectrum, simply responding to whatever demand is in the market and creating a supply for that, really not overthinking whether it's valuable or not, and being timely with the opportunities, such as buying and selling PPE equipment when the pandemic starts, right? Or creating a carbon removal company today, despite the fact that you don't think it's going to work, but there is enough interest because you think you're going to be able to generate money and so on. So these two artificial ends of the spectrum that I have now just created, what do you think about that? Like, how do you think people perceive this? What are your personal thoughts? Where would you put yourself? Is it possible to create a meaningful business? And does it make it more hard to make money when you try to when you chase after meaning? What do you think?
That's a very long question, and I want to give you a great answer, and I can answer both of them from my business point of view, because both of them affect me. So in 2020, when the world fell apart and airlines ground to a halt and airports were shut and our business was about to fall on its knees, I had everybody and their aunt to ring me up and say, you need to start selling PPE. You need to do that. Because I had 150 salespeople. Put your sales team on this and let's go to market and sell PPE. And I went, no, because I don't want to accept that the reality of PPE is where I'm going to be playing. Now, I could have made a huge amount of money at that time because I had the relationship with the airlines, the airports, anybody in travel, and I had an amazing sales team.
What do you mean by that? That you don't want to accept that that's the play you want to play in?
Because I didn't want to accept the world of COVID was going to last so long and this PPE thing would go on forever.
I see you.
And I was probably wrong, because if I'd known that COVID was going to last 102 weeks or whatever it is, it's not that it's even finished, but 102 weeks for me of pain, I would have done that. I would have pivoted, as the world calls it, but I said, no, I want my business to come back, and I've got to do everything I can to improve that business while this shutdown, lockdown, whatever it is now. And if I start peddling the product, which is really going to harm my business, people wanted me to sell face masks and gloves and uniforms that cabin crew could wear. And I'm like, that's not what the experience I want to sell on an airplane. If someone else wants to go to market and sell that, it's up to them. But I don't want to accept that that's my reality today. My reality today is I want us to get back to selling the travel media. And I said, right, what can I do at that point? Rather than transforming ourselves into the evil that had become it, I wanted to just focus on building my team to keep them in a good place. So when the market came back, they could do it, rather than switching their focus to something else. And carbon, what's the acronym now?
Carbon removal or?
No, the new acronym, which is about diversity. Basically, we've been carbon neutral for about 4 years. So way ahead of the trend. We've been very, very conscious of the fact that we produced magazines that flew around the planet causing harm. So we did everything we could to offset that. Does it really help? Who knows? It's a marketing ploy. And I think there are lots of things that people do because it ticks a box for somebody. And I think you've got to be very, very careful. If the world doesn't need what we're pushing up, and it could be a temporary phase, it could be a long phase, but if the world doesn't really need it, and you're not doing much good and you're not giving back to society or to the communities you work in, then for me, I don't think it's the right thing to do. Just peddling to make a profit, there's plenty of people who do that. I want to make sure that products that we do, the information that we serve, the world we work in is benefiting, and my team are getting better, and they're growing, they're developing, and they're feeling like they're a use to society. And that's why, I've been very vocal about working from home, because I don't think you're building relationships sitting at home. Yes, I hear the argument, I can spend more time with my kids. I can pick them up when I need to. You should be able to do that anyway. with a job. You should have an employer that understands that you've got kids and you want to have a more work-life balance. But I do not think society is going to benefit from people working at home constantly.
What do you think is the mindset, the basic difference between an entrepreneur and who is under employment?
Depends what job they do. There are lots of them. I have amazing people who work for me who I think have far more entrepreneurial spirit than I do. Full stop, period. And I have people who work for me who just do their job, get their paycheck, and they just want to go home. And it's a choice. It's like everything else. It's how you see the world. If you want to see the world as full of opportunities, or you want to see the world as full of problems, that's what you're going to attract and that's what you're going to be. It's the same as half full or half empty.
In a way, but there's always a boss, isn't there?
Listen, you've run companies. Were you the boss?
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a boss, sometimes I don't.
Exactly. But you had the bank. They're the boss. You had investors. They're the boss. You're somebody. We've all got to answer to somebody. We don't just make decisions in isolation. We have somebody that's responsible for us. Sometimes I feel like I'm the boss I answer to my employees because they want cost of inflation, the cost of energy rising, interest rates going up. They want me to pay for that. When I started out in business and I was an employee and it was difficult, we went from 3% to 15% interest rates. We didn't go to our boss and say, interest rates have gone up. Can we have some more money, please? But today it's very, very acceptable to do that.
It is.
And I think that's the way the world has changed. It's a different place. People expect the company they work for to protect them from every foul wind that blows in.
I agree with that. That's something I've observed as well. And people have this idea of, I don't know if you've heard the terminology, ghost quitting, which is more traditionally called coasting, right? You kind of go up a hill and then you kind of put it into neutral and let the momentum take you for the next few years in your career until people are fed up with you and then you move on to another job. I've known a lot of people who kind of make their living in this way. I don't know if you have, but to me, that's kind of the basic difference between being an entrepreneur and being in the employee mindset is the risk that you take and the idea of ownership. Have you experienced something like that, either in your decisions or the people that you've worked with?
I think anybody who comes to work for me is taking a risk. They're betting on me. They're betting that I'm going to help them get to where they're going to get to. I've had 3 people resign this week because for the last couple of years, we've been a bit soft. We've been nice. We haven't been pushing people because the market's been soft. Now we're up in our game. I've got commitments. I want to grow fast. The travel numbers are unbelievable. I want to take advantage of it. So I'm increasing the energy and the momentum and the expectation of people. And now all of a sudden they're going, I don't want to do that. I'm not enjoying working here anymore. And I'm going, all right, then you need to go somewhere else. And I've got to be comfortable with that. I'd rather have people who believe what I believe. And I think this is a mantra to anybody starting a business, running a small business. If people do not believe in your vision and do not believe what you believe, you are not going to do anything. They're going to get offered 10 shillings more. See, that makes me sound very old. 10 bags of silver more. And they're going to walk out the door. No matter how much fruit and gym memberships and health memberships you got, someone else will give them even more. They'll give them 2 gym memberships. They'll give them a company car. They'll clean their car a weekend and do their dry cleaning for them. And they'll jump ship. But if they believe what you believe, and and they share your vision, and they're part of your story, you can build an amazing business together. And that's what's important, not the shiny objects that go around it.
So let me change gears and ask you a very direct question, and kind of take advantage of the fact that you're here in my podcast. So Inc. Global is you define it as a travel media company. I'll just focus on the basic and call it a media company. Would that be all right?
Sure.
So as a media company, you've grown a media company to a very decent size over the years. Now, Startup Soft London is a media company as well, focused on a different niche perhaps, but I think there are some universal ideas and approaches which make growing a media company easier, or some best practices even when it comes to media. So if you were to take us as a case study, right, you don't need to go into any detail, but basically, what do you think makes a media company successful, or what usually leads to its demise? What are the things it should look out for?
2007, magazines are dying. Print is dying. Print is dead. That was the headlines everywhere.
Yeah,
everyone kept saying to me, sorry, you've got to get out of magazines. You're not going to make any money. February 2020. 2019 was our best year ever. We'd broken every record. January and February 2020, broken the records again. March was a brilliant month. The fact that we paid for everything and, the magazines were on the plane and we had to take them all off without getting paid was very, very painful. So even though the whole business was dying, I found a niche within that media section that worked. That's what business is. You've got to find your own little niche. You've got to find something that you do. You're focusing very much on startups. There's never going to be a shortage of startups. But you've got to make sure that every startup knows about you, knows that you exist, knows that they want to talk to you, because then your database, your audience is so powerful for Seed Legals, NatWest, all these people, they want to talk to you because you have that audience they want to reach. For me, any media business is about the audience. The reason that I've stayed in travel, and it's done me brilliantly, Ozan, I promise you, I've never looked back on the fact since we decided to commit to travel in 2005, it's changed my life, and I love travel. I love the whole adventure of it. And you've got to make sure that, your enthusiasm and your passion about startups is exactly the same way. But my reasoning for building a travel business was there's never any shortage of people traveling. Then the quality of that audience is so far superior to the general consumer. They've got more money, they're more affluent, they own more than one home, they have more than one car, they have more kids, they spend more money on credit cards, and they're more adventurous, they're more spontaneous. These are qualities that people want in their customer. They're prepared to explore and take risks. And I think that's why I benefited, because I've had such a superb audience. And I've been able to find brands that want to be associated with it. So if you run a media business, have you got a great audience? And have you got brands that want to reach that audience? And then in the middle of it, have you got a team that can put those two together?
Okay. So your basic advice is act as the bridge for brands to reach to your audience, which makes it, in that sense, an advertising business model. And perhaps one of the different models we are seeing today is the subscription. And I'm sure you have a lot of exposure to this as well. So rather than being targeted by ads, people opt in for a paid membership, and a lot of publications are pushing for that. Do you think that's working? Do you think the industry is heading that way?
I'm cancelling every single thing that takes money off me at the minute. What's wrong with seeing an ad? I think the problem that we have with ads at the minute is there's too many ads in too many places that don't need to be there. But there are places where ads need to be, because, I want that content. I don't want to pay $39 a month to the information. It's too much. Do you know how long it took me to cancel my information subscription? 6 months, because I couldn't find anywhere how to cancel my subscription.
Yeah.
So in the end, I wrote to the CEO, Jessica, and I said, I want to cancel. I'm not using it. I don't read it enough. I can't justify the spending £38 a month. Can you tell me how to cancel it? And it was easy. It was cancelled in a second. But, because it was so difficult, I thought, I'll deal with that somewhere. I'll deal with it somewhere else. We've got Netflix, we've got Disney Plus, we've got Paramount, we've got Sky, we've got Virgin.
They add up.
We've got all these things.
They do have a way of adding up, for sure.
Yeah. So, all these things are wanting £7 here, £9 here, and it's all going up. And I started to realize, bloody hell, how much money am I spending on all these things? And I think, those things are doing well, but I think it's getting harder. As there's more and more of them, you're going to start siphoning it down to the things that you really want. And I think that, everybody wants a SaaS business, but you need multifaceted revenue streams, whatever business you've got. You can't have just one revenue stream, because if that revenue stream comes a pickle, then you're in trouble.
I think that's kind of like a survival trait, whether you can focus on a single business or whether you like a few points to hang on so you can balance yourself in times of crisis. So being, as someone who has grown up in Istanbul and in an economy which is not always very stable, my reflex is have a few things to hang on, because it's safer, it's more secure. But there is a trade-off with that, which is it's more difficult to specialize and be this perfect tick to the box people are sometimes looking to fill. But I see the world changing in such a way that it is kind of becoming more natural to be more multifaceted in our professional skills. What do you observe in the people that you work with? And especially, I know you do coach a few entrepreneurs, especially young ones. What do your conversations look like with them? What are the things that they struggle with, and how do you help them? Do you have themes that you keep coming back to when you give advice? I would love to hear a few of those.
I'm like a Savile Row tailor. Everything is bespoke. I don't do cookie cutter stuff. I
Hmm.
look at every situation and I'll say, right, this is what I think and I observe.
Yeah.
But there's some similar themes. They're all far too bloody clever for their own good. You know, they are the smartest people in every room they go into. They do tasks which are beneath them. Now, the first thing I'll always say to somebody is, what's your hourly rate? And they go, what are you talking about? I said, well, what do you want to earn an hour? And I said, then if you extrapolate that 40 hours a week and 50 weeks a year, what do you want to earn? And they'll work that out. And I say, okay, that's your hourly rate. And most people's hourly rate is somewhere between $100 and $200 or £200. And I say, okay, any task that's below that, you should not be doing. Don't do £200. Don't do £100 tasks. Don't do £5 tasks. Find somebody who can do that for £5 for you.
Okay.
Because the quicker you can get to making your hourly rate higher, so you only do the biggest tasks, the things that add the most value to your business, the quicker your business will grow. That's £100,000, by the way.
I like that. I like that. But it requires a certain bit of a courage, doesn't it?
Does it?
I don't know. Perhaps it's a different thing for people with a different background. If you're coming from money, then that can be, and if you have, especially if you feel like you have a safety net, then it's a different. It's like I'm saying this because I know you're interested in body language, happiness, the human brain, and so on. So, how much fear and how much anxiety does that create with you, right? It depends on your particular background, does it not?
No, I think it removes it actually. I think being fear and fearless and self and selfish and selfless, they're all just anagrams of the same words. You've got to make sure you're looking after yourself. If you're doing everything, I promise you're not going to go very far. If you've got a team of people who are hopeless, you're not going to go very far. If you haven't built the strongest possible team, if you haven't developed your team, you haven't grown your team, the biggest thing that I see in young entrepreneurs is, well, I don't want to spend the money developing because they could leave because people are leaving all the time. You say, what happens if they stay and they're no good?
Yeah, that's always the dilemma. What if they stay?
So we just got to make sure that we're making our team, we've got to show our team the same thing. What do you want to earn? The cost of everything is doubling very, very quickly. You can't survive on the 40 grand you might make now, which you thought you could last year. I can give you a 20% pay rise, right? This is what happened about 9 months ago. I was on a podcast and I said, the problem we've got right now is Amazon has taken the minimum wage to $15. I think it was from 9 or 10 to 15. I said, it's worthless. And the interviewer asked me, he said, why? I said, because everything they're going to buy is going to cost them 20. I said, so because inflation and everything else is moving so quickly, you cannot keep up with it. No matter how much you earn, you're never going to have enough unless you're making so much money, that you don't worry about these details. And most of the people, 99.9% of the people will not make enough. That's going to be the challenge for entrepreneurs. The questions and the things that I'm being asked as a boss today, I've never been asked before.
Like what?
I've never been, can I have a pay rise, please, because my rent has doubled?
Mm-hmm.
Can I have a pay rise, please, because I'm getting offered so much more money to go work across the road? Can I have a pay rise, please, because I think I should have one, because I've been here a year?
What do you say? What do you say when somebody especially says, okay, I'm getting more from a competitor and here's your offer to increase my salary or I'll walk out? How do you approach those conversations?
I'll say, let me get you an Uber.
Right.
But I'll tell you an honest conversation I had yesterday.
Yeah.
A guy walked in here and he asked for a pay rise. And I looked him in the eye and I said, is that all you're worth to me? And he said, what do you mean? I said, I think you're worth much more than that to me. And I generally didn't know what he was on. When he told me he was on, I was quite shocked. He'd never asked for a pay rise before. And he wasn't asking for a pay rise because he wasn't have enough money, because he makes plenty of money. It's all based on commission.
Yeah.
But I said, you're worth much more than that to me and to the business. And I said, I want you to go away and think about it. and in the evening, he sent me an email. He goes, I think I should have another 10,000 more. And I said, I think you're right. And in the end, we settled a little bit less than that. And I said, the only reason I'm not giving you what you asked for is that there are a few things that I want you to improve on. And when you improve on them, then I'll give you that. But how many bosses, and I asked someone this question yesterday, how many bosses would do that? How many bosses would just say, fuck, is that all he wants? Right, let's give it to him.
Very, very few. I believe bosses with the entrepreneurial spirit, they really do get it. So that's an advantage that you have, because You've seen the ups and downs and you understand and you can empathize with people in that sense, is what I'm thinking.
I want, if I've got a good person, the last thing I want to do is to underpay them. Because at some point in their career, they're going to think about this and go, why is he paying me so little? What does he not value me? I hired a guy, I don't know, about a year ago, and what he asked for, and I said, that's just not enough. He's worth more than that. And I said to the recruiter, I said, pay him a bit more. I want him to join me. I really like him. He was in shock, and I was like, nobody does that. It's really important in today's world that if you find good people, that you look after them. You don't have to overpay them. You just got to give them a pathway to living the life they want to live. And money is not the only thing that comes from work.
Yeah, it's not the only currency. Sometimes it's about respect. Sometimes it's about learning. And this is something that I do see with a lot of companies. People find it very easy to disrespect or kind of walk over the people that they do pay. And I think that's really sad. And it really demotivates people.
But also, some people would rather a title than a paycheck. Some people would rather responsibility than a paycheck. Some people want training, coaching, developing, and being in a company of, exceptional people more than a paycheck. And I think you've got to decide as your business, why do you exist? One of the things that I designed, and I wrote about this in the book, look, I wasn't going to go to hell without getting a gift. And, COVID was a horrible time for our business. We went from 150 million to nothing. And, I'm back in startup phase. I'm a startup in London. I've got 27 years of being an overnight success. I'm starting again. I'm having to rebuild. I had a team here that took me a decade and a half to build, and now I've got to rebuild it in a year and a half. And I'm doing it at a time when the world is a bit of a mashed up place. We got COVID was one thing. Now we've got a recession and inflation problems. I am a startup again, and I've got to go out to market and convince people to come on my journey with me. Now I've got a lot more experience than the 21-year-old, 22-year-old is trying to do the same thing. And I've got audiences, and I've got relationships, and I've got clients. So it makes it a little bit more interesting. But I've got the same challenges they have. Got to hire people, make enough cash. I've got to make sure that we can do what we set out to do. We deliver what we promise, whatever it says on the tin. It's scary and exciting at the same time. And I think the line between fear and opportunity is so bloody small. If I'm really honest, and I've said this a few times, you're one or two deals away from failure, and you're one or two deals away from success.
It certainly feels like it when you're an entrepreneur. And I'm afraid we are running out of time, but let me ask you this final question. Let's reflect on this for a few minutes. Especially this goes back to the idea that you just shared, which is set yourself an aspirational daily rate, hourly rate, whatever. And anything falls below that, delegate. And just focus on the tasks that generate you a lot of value. And that is the fastest way to meaningful growth. Is kind of a recap of what you said. Hope that's accurate. So one of the bottlenecks in coming to that point that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is the lack of capital or the lack of funding, because there is a certain time period when you're on that journey, right, where you either do not have the money, or if you have it, you're afraid to spend it, because that's the thing. If you have spent 5 years of your life in employment, saving a limited amount of funds every month, and it's quite difficult to burn through your 5-10 year savings for the pursuit of an idea. And there is risk involved with that. And that risk is perceived different, perhaps, to someone who has access to more capital. So within the realm of this question, and especially availability of funding and perhaps borrowing, what is your approach? What is your advice to entrepreneurs? And what do you think the right way in terms of dealing with the lack of funds, generating more funds, dealing with that risk? Should startups in the UK always seek funding? Should they risk it themselves? What do you think?
I'm definitely the camp that says bootstrap your business for as long as you possibly can, because I'm not convinced, if you're going to build something and you need a lot of money to build it, then, you can't really bootstrap that. But most businesses, and I've built quite a few businesses now, that have been able to do it on the shoestring or a very small loan, and a loan where you're not giving away your equity. You want to hold on to your equity as long as you possibly can. The longer you hold on to as much of it as you can, the better. I gave up way too much equity in the early days, and it took me a long time to get some of it back. And and then I kept selling bits of it. I've got the mentality like a roulette player. Every time I have a little win, I take a bit off the table. But it is, just know, if you borrow £1 million, somebody wants 10 to 20 million back before you get any money. Simple as that. That is the basic mathematics of borrowing money, of private equity or VC investment.
Yeah.
They're going to take their pound of flesh before you get what you want. And they're going to limit you on what you can earn. They're going to limit you on what you can do. They're going to tell you that what you're doing is wrong, and they're going to have 15 different opinions of which are different to yours. On the other end, you've got brain capital, you've got analysts, you've got people around you who can help you grow. I've worked with many of the biggest private equity companies, and I've been incredibly disappointed by their teams, by the people they've brought in, by the advice they've given, which mostly has been pretty inept. And, these guys have never run a business. They've never run a bar, half of them. They literally are very well educated, book smart people who've got lots of theory, but no real practice. There are 3 people right now you need to go and find. Let's end with this point, Ozan. 3 people you need to find. Somebody who's done what you want to do. And not just one of those people, because they could have just got lucky. Get a couple of those in your stable. You need your superheroes around you. Somebody who has done what you want to do. Somebody who has gone where you want to go. That's the guys, girls, people you want in your stable. Somebody who's going the same way as you, who's gonna keep you on point, who's going to challenge you. Sometimes you'll be ahead, sometimes you'll be behind, but you'll be motivated by each other. Somebody who is so positive and encouraging and supportive of you. When you make a mistake, they just say, wipe your mouth, Simon, and get on with it. Or somebody says, stop being a baby. You're not dealing with this properly. Stop trying to win every flipping battle. You've got to lose a few battles. And the third person is somebody who's going to tell you the truth. It's not going to sugarcoat anything. Who's going to give you a little bit of wisdom, someone who's got a little bit of grey hair. I'll never forget my very first boss. He always had this ex-bank manager around him. And I said, what does he do? And he goes, he doesn't do anything other than be here. So somebody to just bounce off of, and someone who can keep me calm and keep me level-headed. And I think if you've got those 3 people in your life, somebody who's done what you want to do or gone where you want to go, somebody who's going the same direction as you will keep you on point, and somebody who's going to keep you calm and level-headed and stop you making stupid decisions, life is beautiful.
That's great advice. So the 3 people you need in a business. That's the first time I'm hearing of this, but I do like it. Someone to keep you calm, someone to push you, and someone who's gone where you want to go. Thanks for joining this chat, Simon. It was lovely to hear your thoughts and your experience. And amazing. Are you hiring, by the way? Is there a shout out you would like to do for people who might listen to the podcast, and how should they get in touch with you?
We're growing. We're a startup, right? So we're growing. I want amazing tech people. I want amazing content people. I want amazing salespeople. People who think they can sell digital. We're a digital business now. We've transformed from being the king of in-flight magazines to being the king of TV, the king of retargeting, the king of content, the king of social media, the king of creating content for travelers all over the world. We touch 5 million travelers a day, and we are going to grow really fast. And I would encourage anyone to read my 3 books. I've wrote 3 books. The first one starts from when I started. So it's a real startup book of all the pitfalls. I only survived because I got a little bit of money and I got lucky. The second one is the story of me at every phase of my life, which is called White Belt Thinking. The first one's called There's No F in Sales, because that's one of the biggest challenges that most businesses have, that there is no F in sales. And I wrote that in September 2019. And it was from basically 1994 to 2015. It was the first sort of 20 years of my business life. Within 6 months, our business has gone from 150 million to nothing, and there was no F in sales. So be very careful what you write down on a piece of paper. And the latest book, which has just come out, is called Equanimity, which is a diary of a CEO in crisis. And I will tell you that everybody listening to you right now who's running a business, doesn't matter if they're doing brilliantly or doing badly, they need to read that book. It's got 50 lessons from 50 of the most powerful people on the planet. It's me, it's my diary of what I went through, how I took a business that was doing unbelievably, it didn't just have a little blip, it had an absolute tsunami. It was wiped out. We were basically back to nothing, and how I've built it up again and made it an exciting business that everybody who I talk to is excited about. And, it's a blueprint for some of the challenges that life will throw at you. And look for the bloody opportunities. That's the last thing I'll say to your listeners. Look for opportunities. They're presenting themselves every single moment of every single day to you. If you're not awake, aware, and available, you'll miss them.
Thank you, Simon, for everything you've shared. Great chat.
Thank you.